Hi folks, you're with Tassless today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how extensive the help and support and how well it's aided and abetted all the protests that are pro-globalist, anti-white. Well, the protests go on everywhere. I mean, recently we've seen them in a number of places in the US, for example, trying to shut down Charlie Kirk's town hall type talks in some of the universities and colleges around the United States. But you see it everywhere. You see it in, whether it be New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Britain, anywhere. There's this fast mobilisation of a decent-sized mob most of the time, anyway, to shut down any speaker that's not pro-globalist, or any event that's not pro-globalist, or any event that could be seen as not sort of pro the globalist project, maybe. And you don't have to really sort of go across the line very far at all. The line is quite far to the left, and it's the line that you cross is far to the left at the moment, only because it's the leftist activism that is the most effective weapon or series of weapons to demoralize and destroy Western, humiliate and crush Western society. The language of the left and the tools of the left and the devices of the left are only useful in that sense. As soon as the white society has been fully crushed, and which can't be that far away at the moment from what I see around me, as soon as that's fully crushed, then the left will no longer be useful. And it's a bit like a lot of the Bolshevik activists and street goons and so on that helped the Soviet Bolshevik communist government come to power in 1917, and through the civil war that ensued. As soon as the communists thought, Lenin and Stalin and Trotsky, as soon as they thought they were in control, they then turned on these people, and most of them were taken out back and shot and got rid of. They were useful, and Lenin called them, Vladimir Lenin called them the useful fools, which we're seeing, the likes of the Antivas and so on today fulfilling that purpose for the globalists. But what I want to talk about is the wider organisation behind this. Now, we know there's a massive logistical support machine to move as many black and brown people out of the third world countries into the West. That's sort of, we know that it's vast funds are available to support that. And there's an international logistics machine that goes through NGOs, people smugglers, the United Nations, various governments, and to move all these black and brown peasants into the West. It's no sort of surprise or accident that 200,000 to 300,000 illegals are flooding across the Mexico-US border every month, and it's no surprise the amount of people that are entering Europe and Britain and so on. These people don't have a desire to move to poor countries; they just want to go to the rich countries. And again, there's a vast infrastructure supporting them. Now, what always intrigues me is how Western politicians, even the ones that are not bought and paid for and owned by the globalists, which is precious few, by the way, why they're not really talking about this. I mean, really turning into a news item and front page news and covering it wherever they go. But that doesn't seem to be the case. What's interesting is all these gazillions of dollars are paid to do this. Move vast amounts of people around or create street mobs to shut down non-globalist speakers, and yet no one sort of follows the money because there's big bucks here, and yet no one's following the money. For example, I mean, just some time ago, years ago, I saw a protest, and I saw all the limousine buses that were used to bus in the protesters. Now, if you look at the cost of busing all those people in, there was I don't know, must have been 20, over 20 limos at the 70 odd people per bus, and and other people would come in, through other means. But I looked at the area and I saw all these buses parked there. So I told the media, there was some media, hey guys, there's a whole lot of buses over there, and they didn't give a shit. Were not interested. They were there to find Nazis. They weren't interested in the people that were causing the mayhem and running around rioting without a permit. That wasn't, they weren't interested in that. They were only interested in one ideological position, and that was it. And but the cost of doing that, and I noticed other logistical sort of things like, there was someone had paid for those buses. That some of the signs were quite well done and well printed, and someone had paid for that. Now there's also a logistics machine that people were going around. There were these small. Like taco stands and sandwich stands, mobile sandwich stands and so on, that were dispensing things like sandwiches and just take out food, drinks, water and the like. But that was all paid for. It's free to whoever wanted it. So again, that would have been quite expensive. If you look at hiring those, say for a function or something like that, you're hiring some of the, you can be up for a few $1,000s just for a few hours, and yet these things were there sort of close to all day, and many of them along the route of the march, and again people going around, driving around with these really big refrigerated facilities and handing out chilled bottles of water and so on. And there are some even that if the protest is going to go into the night, well, it's not a protest, it's just an organised goon squad, is going to go into the night, they'll bring around things like warm clothing and blankets. So that's the extent of the organising here. And they're also professional agitators. People have obviously done it many times before. And if you look at some of the people that are leading these protests and the chants and the guys on the bullhorns and that sort of thing, they're sort of flown in from wherever. They'll be in New York one day, and then a few days later they're in Los Angeles, and then they're in Dallas, Texas, and then they're in Minneapolis, and then they're in Portland, Oregon, and so on. So they're moving around, and with all their equipment and all their stuff, they're moving around. You're staying in hotels, eating food, and they're not staying in some 2-star shithole hotel somewhere. They're staying in decent hotels, 4 or 5-star hotels. So this is all there's a lot of money, is what I'm saying here. There are people who are on the payroll full time doing this. Someone's paying their salary. Someone's paying them to do it. Now, if you add up, and I've added up sort of for just one that I've seen, and others, I've looked at the cost of putting this on. This doesn't include the salaries of people who are paid in background to make it all happen, which would be, big bucks in itself. But some of these, you're spending a couple of $100,000 to put this on. Now, I know everyone is, a quick flash mob, if you like, wouldn't cost that much, but some of the other ones, it's costing $200,000 more in some cases. Again, that doesn't include the guys in background. So if you look at the amount of marches and demonstrations and so on that they do, these people, then just the cost of it would run into just say somewhere like in Australia, it would be well over $1 million a month, and that's just the street mobs. There are also various what would you call it? Meetings like the international meeting for the transgender rights group, and again, these sort of gatherings, often international but national as well. They hold them in 5-star hotels with $200 a meal dinners and lavish breakfasts and opportunity for lots of networking. Beautifully produced literature on the highest quality paper and so on and so forth. Now, if you look, there's one recently that was held in Sydney's probably the one of the top 3 most expensive hotels in Sydney. Now, you can be looking at, just for a basic room, $500 a night in these places. Then you add the food on top, and the thing goes for 3 days, and you've got over 1,000 delegates, as they call them. Now, let's say it's costing 3,000. That would be not including travel to get there, because they're coming from all over the place. You'd be looking at between 300,000 and 400,000 just on that, and traveling as well. So you add these in, which are going on every week somewhere in Australia, and then you add that in, and again you're looking at massive dollars that are supporting this. And these people are able to, the street marches, any of them are able to all sorts of damage, commit all sorts of violent acts, graffiti, setting fire to cars, and all sorts of things. And the police seem incredibly reluctant to intervene. They just seem to want to let it go. And the comments are, well, those shops, they got insurance, it's not a problem. So no one's interested. So no one's talking about, did you know that these, this particular group or that group is being funded to the tune of this, and this is the damage they're causing. There really needs to be I believe, a concerted effort to expose all this, because there are big bucks behind it, powerful people with big bucks behind it. So this needs to, in my view, be exposed. Now let's take the reverse. There's a group like, I don't know, the Proud Boys in the United States, who could hardly be described as radical, as much as the media smear them as being, Nazis and Hitler and everything like that. They could hardly be described as being radical. They're in fact pretty moderate. They're there to try and stop the antics of Antifa and all those guys, Black Lives Matter and so on. So they're, again, hardly radicals and hardly dangerous in my view anyway. And yet, if they even so much as put a toe out of the front door, put a foot out of the front door, or do anything at all, then there's universal. The media just come in on a firestorm of hit pieces, and the politicians are gagging into the microphone to say Nazis, Hitler. And so this goes on, and the banks will shut down bank accounts, the social media will shut them down. There's just this all-out attack from all directions, and yet the other side, lavishly funded as they are, can really do as they please without anything happening to them. And if the odd 1 or 2 flunkies take a fall, then that's it. They're able to be dragged in, assuming that the prosecution's departments even bothers to prosecute some of these, the Antifa and the BLM and all that. So assuming there are even a prosecution to cases even taken up, which is rare in itself. It's incredible how often they get a very, very sympathetic judge who maybe who worked in the same NGO that is funding and assisting the protest march in the first place. And the judge will then throw the case out, no conviction recorded, and the person's back on the street waving placards in 5 minutes. So these sort of things going on. This is a huge international network of money and corrupted and infiltrated departments of justice and so on. And this should be front page news. We should all be talking about it. We should all be reading about it, because it's outrageous. And yet there's barely a whisper. Politicians barely talk about it. Our media just won't touch it. And you find the odd few pieces on social media, assuming they aren't shut down. So that's the extent of it. But this is an indication of what we're up against. These are the forces, very well funded forces, very well resourced, that are determined to crush and demoralize the West, social structure, everything about the West. And they're very well supported, funded and resourced and protected. And we need to expose this, in my view. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.